the articles and movies and books and discussions, why aren't we having happier sex, more fulfilling sex? What's wrong?
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that make me. Let's talk about sex.
So your libido's down.
Way down.
Could it be a physical thing or is it psychological?
How do you know what's average? I don't know.
I'm kind of a lame duck. He's much more virile than I am.
Sex is just a symptom. The real crisis in our society is a crisis of relationships.
One of my biggest concerns, how many partners they had in certain sexual activities.
Viagra.
Unfortunately, in this culture, we are so genitally focused that we no longer have any relationship with our sexual energy.
I think it's probably very hard to talk about because it's so personal.
I'm much more open about sexuality.
I know, it seems taboo.
I think they think that what they might be doing is wrong.
Oh, well, I think people act like it's a bad thing, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
We need first self-knowledge. In order to be able to love, we need to know who we are.
Let's talk about sex.
A lot of my friends don't think it's a very big deal.
There's, in a sense, a rising repulsion to sex.
Right, I think people think everybody's doing it, but I'm not.
None of us gets all the love and affection precisely when we need it and the way we need it. And so we're going to have certain kind of issues we have to deal with.
Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null. I'd like to welcome you to a continuation of our self-empowerment series. Today we're going to be talking about how to have great sex all the time. Yes, it's possible, unless you're opposing your own sexuality. Now in this journey that we're about to take, I'm going to be sharing questions from this audience. We're in New York City in my studio. We have a packed house here. We have a lot of questions, and these questions represent, I'm sure, questions of people at home. But before we get there and to your questions, I want to share some of my thoughts of what has brought me to where I believe we can have great sex all the time and be fulfilled in that sex, whatever it is that we share among consenting adults. It was in the mid-1970s. We were in the midst of the sexual revolution in the heterosexual community and the gay community. And I was curious about something. And my curiosity was simple. Why is it that when a man has an orgasm, he frequently feels exhausted? And yet when you run a marathon, as I've done many times, over 50 marathons, you lose upwards of 9 pounds of water, which is a gallon, and you still can feel fine. Now I can tell you, there are times in the marathon where I didn't feel fine, but when I finished it, it was exuberant. And then you give a pint of blood, you feel nothing. So we got 9 gallons of liquid coming from our body, a pint of liquid coming from our body, and a teaspoon of liquid coming from our body. But enormous differences in how we feel. So I asked people, and they all had pretty much the same phenomena. Yeah, it happens, so. And I said, but so something is going on, and I want to know what it is. So I asked my audience, I would like volunteers to participate in a sexual study. I got in Dr. Douglas Dean, Edward Graff, PhD, Dr. Elaine Kahn, and others. And through the Institute of Applied Biology, we set up a model. And the model was that we, in one room of a building, we would set up a bedroom. In the other room, on machines that would be measuring different energy waves in the people, we couldn't see the people, we couldn't hear the people, but we could simply see the energy. And then I blinded it. So no one in the room did I let know who was in the other room and what they were doing. And I wanted to see if there was a pattern that we could detect simply by watching energy and as it manifested on a screen. Now, recently there is a Professor Laszlo, and he is leading 200,000 people around the world in different countries on a given day and at different times of the day to pray and meditate for world peace. and they'll go silent, and for about an hour and a half, that's all they will do. There's a series of very sensitive computers at Princeton that will be measuring to see if it has any impact. Now, theoretically, it should have no impact, but he believes that there will be a universal impact because a projection of energy has power. He also found this, as other physicists did, when right after 9/11, there was a measurable difference in energy. There was also a Japanese researcher who found that when he dropped a single drop of water and froze it to below zero, and looked at it under a very powerful microscope, that it looked like shards of glass. But then when he brought in some Buddhist priests to meditate on a single drop of water before it was dropped and it was frozen, it had perfect symmetry. And if they meditated on love, peace, whatever they were asked to meditate on, each one of those took on a different configuration, but it remained consistent, which showed that our thought creates a reality. Now, anyone who studies psychoneuroimmunology, psycho, the brain, the conscious brain, and subconscious brain, neuro, our nervous system, immunology, our immune system, knows that what you think, your body immediately, instantaneously responds to. So if you think a negative thought, you immediately secrete a negative biochemistry. If you think a positive thought, you immediately secrete a positive biochemistry. We can actually measure cortisol, which is a flight or fight hormone. When you're under stress, the body instantaneously starts secreting cortisol. Your blood sugar goes up because when you're fleeing, you need energy, hence the blood sugar. You need power, you need strength, you need all of your reflexes, your sight, your smell, your sound, at a much higher level. And that's exactly what cortisol gives you for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. Your blood sugar's up, but then it comes back down again. Everything in life is understanding the flow of energy and the rhythm of energy. And once you understand how to use the rhythm of your energy, then you can use it physically, mentally, psychically, so that everything flows with an ease. Now, let's go back into the experiment. In the experiment, I took homosexual men and women who didn't know their partners, strangers. I took homosexuals who had long-term relationships. I took heterosexual single women and single men who didn't know their partners, and those who've been in long-term relationships. I took married couples, young, middle-aged, and older, senior citizens, who did not know their partner, and then were long-time relationship partners. I tried every single combination that I could think of, and then we repeated it 5 times. And I wanted to see after each experience if the readings of the energy that we were measuring on machines in the other room, we tied a little, just put a little electrode on part of their body, generally it was the toe, and so it wouldn't be intrusive in what they were doing. And I asked them just to do one thing only, and then we would measure it. And something interesting happened, and this would affect my whole understanding of human sexuality. In human sexuality, it is the exchange of energy that creates the fulfillment. In a woman and man, it creates the orgasm, it creates a sense of total bliss. It is the lack of exchange of that energy that creates conflict and frustration. And it is the blocking of that energy that creates the enormous amount of frigidity and frustration, where someone may have the desire but can't have fulfillment. Because ideally, you should be able just to think and have an orgasm. That's right. Just think and have an orgasm. That shows you how far you still have to go. Long road ahead. Some people, you could use a jackhammer and they couldn't have an orgasm. We'll get there. Are you there yet? I'm not there yet. And other people then get so tied into trying to prove something with their sexuality that they never find the fulfillment. So all that stands between you and total fulfillment is understanding which energies you're going to use and how you're going to connect them with another person or not connect them. Now, let me go through what I found. And again, this was a double-blind study in that no one knew who was on the other side and no one knew what they were doing. All they knew is that it was creating some energy patterns and to measure these. And then I had the people, after they finished, to sign, to fill out a questionnaire. How did you feel? What was your experience? And measure the level of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what their level of energy was. And here's what I found. The total strangers rarely exchanged any energy. That couples or people who were familiar with their partner frequently exchanged energy, where the man would ejaculate and feel at ease but exhausted, and the woman would feel fulfilled and more often than not complete. And then you had to differentiate the emotional attachment that a person had to the person in the relationship versus strangers. And then we had all the different people masturbate by themselves and no energy was lost. Even when men ejaculated, even repeatedly. And I would ask a man, how many ejaculations could you have in a single evening? Oh, maybe 2 was the average. How many times could you masturbate? Oh, 5. Did you feel exhausted? No. And that taught me that, and what I learned from this, and by the way, this continued to repeat itself, that when someone does not fear the exchange of energy, then there is a greater compatibility. When people fear the stranger will do something with their energy, it is blocked. So a person can have an orgasm, a person can have an experience, but often it is not a fulfilling experience, and the same thing that the energy has been exchanged. Because we also measured that to the degree that one person gives energy, it goes down, the other person has an expanded energy. And hence they become the receptacle of this expanded energy. And I found that interesting. So much so that then I began to understand that what is it then that allows people to have fulfillment? It is how they surrender their energy. Because when you're not afraid to surrender your energy, then you're opening yourself up, you're being vulnerable. And our fear of being vulnerable, our fear of being hurt, used, in some way abused, keeps the energy in. Their primal energy is not fulfilled, and eventually the other energies will collapse behind that. After all, look at the people in our society that have been so imbalanced in their primal energy that they have betrayed their higher energies. Right? When you betray your partner, when you lie and deceive, when you manipulate, adultery, and the different ways that people cheat, that means that to express one energy, they're overcompensating for the lack of authentic connection at the other energies. Like if you're connected to the heart energy, you can't betray a person. You wouldn't. If you can't be with someone and be authentic with them, then don't be with them at all. But don't cheat on them, because that's not right. And what it does, it means that people say, oh, I have, great thoughts, and they'll have great thoughts, but if they're not acting on them in all levels, then there's an imbalance within the person.
It is easy to live for others. Everybody does. I call on you to live for yourselves.
You don't change from the inside out. And all the self-help books and all the self-help gurus have been telling us for the last 10, 20 years, 30, for a long time, that you can change from the inside, that you just have to, boom, think differently. I feel bad about myself. Oh, I'm going to feel good about myself. Boom. I don't, this makes me frightened. Boom. I'm going to stop being frightened. It doesn't work. And one of the reasons that we as a society have gotten ourselves in such a mess and we feel so bad about ourselves is because it doesn't work. And we did what the book said. We went and we told ourselves good things, and we tried to change ourselves, and we tried to think better thoughts, and we still felt lousy. Only now we can't tell anybody because they're going to say, well, if you just think better thoughts, that you wouldn't be in this mess. It's not true. We change by being in relationships that meet our human needs. We are relationship-forming creatures. We don't create ourselves by ourselves. You and I are talking now. We're having a relationship. And because of that, not only our neurochemistry is different, which it is, certain different chemicals within our brain are being uptaken because we have a sense of rapport, perhaps, and so certain chemicals can be uptaken. But even the way our genes are operating are right now different, with you and me talking to each other, than they might be if you went out on the street and talked to somebody else. Different genes would become active. In a very real sense, we create one another. Now, this doesn't mean that we're a slave to the people around us. It does not mean that. It is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, structure your relationships, choose your relationships so that they don't recreate the patterns of the past, so that they're not whatever those, they don't do whatever happened in the past that might make you feel not so great about yourself. They might not be critical or lacking in praise, or all those ways that we try to control each other. Choose relationships that make you feel good about yourself. Choose relationships that make you into the person you want to be.
At the beginning, I used to analyze people and everything. Now they walk in the door and I watch how they're breathing. A couple walks in and she is holding her breath all the way up to the top of the lungs. She's not moving anything down here, so she's going. And she's looking at me like trying to say, am I safe here? But in the meantime, she feels very unsafe, very afraid. What's going to happen? I might have to show my sexuality. And you know, and the man is usually slouching down. You know, it's like, oh, nothing disturbs me, blah, blah, blah. He's not breathing either, right? So then what I do, I can see them with compassion and love, and then I say, I start giving them some lessons in breathing. And I remind them, if they could remember how they breathe, how babies breathe, if they saw a baby lately, and how their bellies goes up and down, and the lower part of the body is moving, and how they relax into breathing. You never saw a baby doing breathing up like that, and yet no effort, the breath comes in. Babies have lots of energy, and so they go, oh, you're right.
And so when it comes to sexuality, the very first thing that I suggest people do is just ask yourself, who's having sex? You or the people in your background that are having sex through you, either to prove something or deny you your fulfillment because they're angry that you'd be having fulfillment. We have other people trying to manipulate us into believing that something within us is going to be judged if we really say, I've enjoyed myself. I mean, what father in America says, daughter, go out there, you're 19, and maximize your sexual potential? If you have sex with anyone, and men, it's different. It shouldn't be, but it is. And it's about conquest. And a lot of men will believe that if they become a sexual athlete, that somehow that proves that they are virile. And so it's not the pleasure of the sex act, it is the reaffirming their ego needs through the person acknowledging, God, you just went 9 hours. And the guy's probably thinking of everything else except the sex he's having. Whereas you shouldn't think about the time you spend, nor should you think about the performance you're engaged in, nor should you worry about whether or not you're going to be able to complete what you've started, nor should you worry about whether or not you're doing something right. All you have to do is think, I'm here in this moment sharing this passion, and let the passion be a connection of two people engaging in a common idea that they're there to share with each other.
Well, I think there's a broader question, because how can we separate sex from the rest of us as a human being, as a part of our totality of expression? And so if the way we stand, the way we walk, the way we talk, the way our bodies manifest symptoms or not, they're all expressions of what's going on inside us. And so why would sex be any different? And so if we're having kind of issues around, I can't express myself, I must be constricted, it's going to show up in sex. If I'm more spontaneous and alive, it's going to show up in sex. If I'm a much more loving person, it's going to show up in my sexual expression that way. And so it really depends so much more on who we are as people, and what we can or can't express in the world, and what we've learned we can be or can't be, or what we believe we are or have to be. you know, those kind of things. And so it's, while sometimes we get specific messages around sex or have certain kind of experiences that contaminate that even more, if a person was abused as a child, or there was an over kind of seductive parent on one hand, versus just say if a young girl has a loving father who really dotes over her and gives her plenty of affection, but it's not inappropriate, odds are much more she'll have a closer relationship with men, and it will include the sexual relationship. On the other hand, if he was super critical and yelling and judgmental, or was overly seductive in some way, chances are that would affect it. It may cause her to be more held back, more constricted, or feel guilty about it, or not feel good about herself in the relationship. So I think when you say, why are we so screwed up sexually, we'd have to look at, well, why am I screwed up in other ways? And part of that's just being human.
Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh teaches that a woman teaches her daughter in Vietnam to treat her man as a guest. What does it mean as a guest? Will you fart in front of a guest? Of course you won't. Will you walk in an underwear with a hole? Of course you won't. But in our modern society, there is this equality and friendship, and they poop in front of each other and they pee in front of each other in a bedroom, in a bathroom, and then they're to make love. And I've seen in my office very often men saying, I know that somebody looks at my beautiful wife and wants to sleep with her. And I don't sleep with my wife, or I do it once in 2-3 weeks, and I'm looking at somebody else's wife. Why? Because there is too much familiarity. It is important to have polarity. It's important to have separateness. I'll give you an example of French culture, and it's a Western culture, French culture and American culture. In French culture, it is okay for a couple, within the couple, for individuals, to have their secrets. They have to have their past life that the other one doesn't know. In America, people are encouraged to share, to know everything about each other, and it's not necessary. You want the mystery. You want the polarity. You want the tension of sexes.
We tend to create ideals of the kind of person we want to be with, and no one can really match up to that. And that becomes an excuse for not being able to fall in love or to love our partner deeply enough, because either we don't match up to the ideal that we have of ourselves, we don't match up in the body type, or we feel that we don't act or look the part that we're supposed to act, and we feel insecure, or we feel our partner doesn't, and that becomes our excuse for not having the connection, the quality of the connection that we really crave. It's based on false values, and we're surrounded with false notions. Our society feeds us with all of these unrealistic models of what is beautiful and what is attractive and what is sensual. In reality, we're human beings, and we're all filled with love and with a desire to connect with each other. We have all different body types, and we have all different levels of intellect and interest, and there are so many ways that we can continue to evolve and grow. But those people who pursue society's false models of perfection are just missing the boat. They're pursuing something that's plastic and superficial and artificial.
Everybody in our society feels they need to perform, right? Whether it's in the bedroom or the boardroom, on television, wherever it is, we feel the idea that we're only worthwhile for what we do. We have to prove ourselves in order simply to be liked and accepted. And whether we have to prove ourselves in the bedroom, or whether we have to prove ourselves to our colleagues, whether we have to prove ourselves to our children that they should love us, it's very much this idea in our culture that you're not valuable just for who you are. Now, this is particularly true sexually, in terms of people who have been sexually abused, or who in some way were made to feel that their only worth is in their sexuality. And that could be male or it could be female. And these people are going to feel that they are always going to have to put themselves in a situation where they have to prove that sexuality.
If a person is using sex to try to get love, obviously it's going to be a whole barter kind of exchange, and it's going to put pressure on that person to have to be a certain way or perform in a certain way. If I believe I've got to perform to be an acceptable person, or I have to prove my manhood or prove my womanhood, if that's involved, obviously it's going to overdetermine, what happens, and we'll take the joy and pleasure, out of the experience. Think of the difference if somebody's dancing and one person's focusing on how well they're dancing. Another one just is there letting loose and just letting themselves follow with the music. What a different experience it would be. And the same thing is true with sexuality, that it's not really distinct. If we're using it for that kind of purpose, one thing typically for men is to feel like they have to perform. It's associated with some kind of performance, almost like being on stage. And my manhood is at stake. And when that ties in, of course, that could bring one of several things. It might be difficult to get an erection. It might be difficult to control when you ejaculate. It might be premature. It might be so prolonged that it can almost never have an orgasm. But all of those can come out of the same kind of internal pressure that one feels to have to perform in some kind of perfect way, or I won't be a good boy, or I won't be loved, I won't be liked, I want to prove my manhood in some way. And often, it's not uncommon for men to have that kind of experience when they're with a new sexual partner. That sort of activates that whole need until they begin to feel more of a sense of acceptance. But of course, our real true acceptance comes from within ourselves. But most of us rely on it from somebody else to various degrees. And the less we rely on it coming from somebody else, the more we feel that comfortableness inside ourselves. And I think the same thing would be true for women. Sometimes women feel like I need to have an orgasm to show I can. And they'll try hard to have an orgasm. And many women will fake an orgasm to really show that I'm enjoying it, whether they are or not. And then, of course, that pressure takes away all the enjoyment. If you can imagine a baseball player who's trying so hard to hit a home run, he's probably going to strike out. Or any kind of sport or activity where we try too hard, the opposite usually happens. And why would sex be excluded from that? So it just kind of carries over into the sexual arena as well.
Intimacy begins with oneself. It does no good to try to find intimacy with friends, lovers, and family if you are starting out from alienation and division within yourself.
My wish and desire would be that people, after they graduate from college or whatever, they have a course that will teach them intimacy and how to connect with a woman. Many women, and I work sometimes with men and women who have been married for 40 years, and then they go, you know what, I'm getting bored to repeat the same things, what's going on, and they don't even know what the G-spot is. And they lived 40 years together. And they say, oh, and you see their eyes go, oh my God, I can do that? And they are so excited that they can make the woman happy like that. Well, if they were taught early in life, they would have a better marriage, a better life, they would be happier. And I don't know why we don't do it. I feel very sad about that. They should teach breathing in school. They should teach communication from the heart, going directly to the needs and desires that we have, not so much into thinking, and rationalizing, yes, needs are bad. No, I need more attention. Would you be willing to look at me for a moment? It's wonderful instead of manipulating attention. The direct question, direct asking for things. That's what I would like people to really get trained in. If you even play tennis, you have to go to school, right? But then you are getting married, living a life with a woman, and you don't even get to school. You don't even learn if you grew up in a family that's not intimate, where do you learn intimacy? Not certainly from porno movies, right? So it's sad. And then people, thank God, now there is Tantra is becoming really popular, and now people come in just because they're curious, and then when they hear what Tantra is about, they go, oh my God, I should have known 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Very, very happy.
The question which one asks oneself begin, at last, to illuminate the world and become one's key to the experience of others.
There's a time when you have to harmonize with someone that you can trust. And by the way, nothing is nicer than someone you can trust who is willing to share your passion, and you in turn theirs. And it's only when you have that complete trust, when you know the person and you're on the same wavelength, when you're absolutely in harmony, that ends up being perfect sex. And you could be with that person 100 years and it will not change, because it's the energy exchange that makes sex fulfilling, not just what you do physically. So this whole idea of going out and getting a nicer pair of, underwear, who cares? It's about being utterly comfortable with the other person. So comfortable with the other person, it's an extension of the comfort you have with yourself. Then you say, how can we play? And why shouldn't you play? You should have the imagination and the exuberance of play, unless you say, well, I've been there, done that, been there, done that. And then you start getting this retread phenomena. And that's why I like the 70s, because in the 70s you could actually have sex, have fun, experiment, and knowing that there's going to come a time when no one's going to experiment, no one's going to have sex, no one's certainly going to have fun with sex. We've got to be serious about this, Gary. We've got to be serious about our sex. Let's talk about it forever. Happy people have happy sex. Very determined people, overly driven people, overly manipulative people don't. And then you have to understand that a lot of people have sex merely to relieve their frustration. And boy, you know that it's the energy is so intense that the person's trying to release. By the time they do, it's like a minor quake. You start getting readings, the Richter reading, 7.8. And that's not happy sex, because what's going to happen is the person within 24 hours is going to be right back to where they were, because they can't play and have fun with it. They're doing it for a point. Now think how many men and women have sex just so they can manipulate a person in a relationship.
This idea of women or men using sex as a bait to try to have the relationship is actually quite common. Part of it comes from we're in a society where we're only deemed worthwhile for our sexuality. But particularly for men or women who have been sexually abused, they're going to believe that their only value is in their sexuality, that this is what they have to do. And therefore they're going to create situations in which they do tease somebody, or they do put sex out on offer, and they're not even conscious about what it is they really want. They're not going out, in the clients I have who do that, they aren't going out and they're saying, oh, let's see if I can, tease this person into having sex with me, and then we'll have a relationship, and then I can stop, and then, they're not doing that. They're just doing what they think they have to do. They think it's the currency with which they have to buy the relationship. Now, for those people who were sexually abused, and we're talking a fairly sizable percentage in our society, again, as much as 30% for women in a broad definition of abuse, what's going to happen, right? They think that they have to be super person in bed, but perhaps actually the act of sex for them is reliving the abuse. So very often they see after they feel secure in the relationship, suddenly they lose interest, and their partner is going, what did I do? What happened? And they must not be interested in the relationship anymore. On the contrary, this person now feels safe within the relationship, and it's like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. And that creates a real problem for the couple. And that's where you need a lot of openness, a lot of awareness, and a lot of talking, and a lot of agreements around boundaries. You need to be able to say, as the case for me in my marriage for a long time, actually I've discovered that sex is really uncomfortable for me. It actually brings up very confusing feelings for me, and I'm not actually comfortable. And thank God I had a partner who said, I love you so much that even if that's on hold, don't worry about it. I'm here for you. I just love you, and I'm still going to find you beautiful, and I'm still going to show you that I find you beautiful, and what a fantastic person you are. And what is it that you need in order to feel safe with me? Once I felt safe within the relationship, I felt safe. I wasn't going to be criticized. I wasn't going to be pressured to do anything I didn't want to do sexually or otherwise. He would tell me what mattered to him in all areas, so I could be really clear that, yeah, obviously he wants to be with me because I'm meeting his needs, so I can really, really relax. Once that happened and I began to feel safe, then I said, well, maybe the sex idea isn't so bad after all. We'll try it a little bit, And then we did, and we talked, and I was able to regain my sexuality. But it was a process. You need a really understanding partner, and you need a lot of honesty, which is very frightening for many people. But the honesty is worth it, and the talking about it is really worth it. And you can tell somebody your need. You can be really clear about your needs about sexuality, whether you want a lot of it or you want none of it. Those are the kinds of things you need to talk about. And if you can talk about that up front, then the relationship has a much better chance of lasting, which, as you know, many relationships in our society simply don't.
When two people are engaging in daily living together, and they have to learn to give and take, and have to learn to practice forgiveness, to practice acceptance of each other, to learn to practice not being judging of each other or of oneself, to learn to be open about their feelings, to be open about their desires, to be open about their sexual desires, to be open about how they like sex or don't like it, how they like to sleep, or the windows open or the windows closed, even little things like that. All those are part of sharing another level of intimacy and learning to accept a person as they are, and not requiring that they be something else. A lot of that doesn't get hammered out in more ephemeral kind of relationships. That only gets challenged and brought up more in an ongoing committed relationship. But on the other hand, there are many people in committed relationships who are not intimate at all. So being in a committed relationship doesn't necessarily mean there'll be intimacy either. So intimacy, I think, is more of a quality from within, and our willingness to be open and disclose ourselves at every single level. And the willingness of our partners to do the same thing. Because if both of us are at the same place, we can enter into a deeper richness together, whether it's a short-term relationship or whether it's a lifetime relationship. But on the other hand, the challenges that go over the longer relationship make possible another depth. On the other hand, there are people that have long relationships that celebrate 50 years together, but they fought the whole time. And they've never been close. And what are they celebrating except the passage of time and being able to put up with each other? And is that anything to be admired or to be honored? So it's not so much the fact of how long or committed a relationship is, but the quality of what we're able to do in our participation with the person. And just knowing that we can reach deeper and deeper levels if we choose to and work at it.
It's primarily in the Western civilization that we're so uncomfortable with sex, and it probably goes back to religious education. And when men or women come in my office, and I immediately, I can feel that they want to talk about sex. They're uncomfortable, they crouch, they turn, I have something to share, you know. And I immediately say, you know, if I were a proctologist, you would show me your anus. And that would be okay. But now I am a specialist of the mind, and your sex is connected with your mind. So it's okay. That's what I specialize in, go ahead. And we laugh a little bit and they get over it. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal when they deal with their sexuality or their sex with their partners, because there is a great insecurity, there is a fear of not being accepted. So it's important to deal with your sexuality, with your sexual fantasies, not during the sex, but again in the context of love-making during everyday activities. So love-making is not an intercourse. Love-making starts, and again, I'm talking about the context of love. My hope is that every person, a man wakes up or a woman wakes up in the morning and has an intention. Not, today I will make big sales. You know, when I ask this question, what's most important to you, to a person says, well, my family is most important. My children are most important. I say, how many hours do you spend thinking, investing your energy, investing your mind, thinking about your business? Well, 10 hours, 11 hours. We work now more and more hours every day. And how many hours do you spend, how much time do you spend thinking about your woman or your man? How much time do you think of pleasing this person that you think is the most important person in your life? 15 minutes, half an hour, it's very rare. And my hope would be, and my encouragement, and I think it's realistic if people set the intention, that the person will wake up in the morning and ask himself or herself a question, how can I pleasure my man or woman in and out of bed today, or sofa, or love seat, or kitchen floor, or dining room table, or preferably all of the above. Otherwise, sexual relationship will become boring. And we need to be open to learning from other people, or learning from other cultures. For example, Oriental cultures have much more knowledge on how to relate sexually within a couple. Most of them are quite monogamous, but sexual life is much richer. Some 20 years ago, I studied with a master from Thailand, Mantak Chia. Western men and women have no idea what Chinese accomplished in the last 3,000 years. Western people build spaceships to go to the moon. That's fantastic, but an educated Chinese man can send his woman to the moon out of his bedroom and make her see stars. And I think we can learn from them.
Tantra says that a relationship has to be worked with. You know, it cannot just happen. You know, at the beginning it happens, it's like a present from the universe. We have those hormones flying all over the place, everything is perfect. But when they start slowing down, we need to work at a relationship. And self-growth is the most wonderful thing that you can do together because it binds you, constantly unites you. The first way that we connect is through breathing. You know, when babies are born, the first thing they do is they connect with their mothers through breathing. And you never saw a baby do this, right? Babies breathe with the belly. They are relaxed. They are connected right away. I notice you, for instance, even while you're listening to me, your mouth is locked, right? And if you try to relax your inner lips, right, and part your teeth slightly, yes, like that, then the breath goes down into the belly first, instead of going up. You feel the difference when you relax your mouth?
I do.
Isn't that incredible? We are not in touch with the sensations of the body. That's why Tantra says, you know, you need to be in touch with what you're feeling, not just in the heart, but also in the sensation of the skin, in the flesh, everywhere. When you're breathing the tantric way, then you feel sensations in your body. You are aware of what's happening, right? If you touch yourself, you can try and even touch your leg right now and breathe out at the same time, feel it. You feel the sensation there, right? Now, if you touch your leg and don't breathe, don't concentrate on the breath, it's not the same. You feel a hand rubbing, but it's not a connection. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you feel the difference?
Feel it.
Yeah? Try again, both of you. Touch your hand and go on the exhalation. The ah sound is very important because the ah sound is the mantra of the heart. You know, you're aware of the om sound?
Yes.
Everybody sings. The om sound covers the third eye and the crown chakra. But the ah sound covers the heart, opens the heart. So if you are in love, when you say ah, it makes you available and open, right? So every breath should be a lovemaking. The inhalation is for you, the yin. The exhalation is for the lover. When we both of you go, ah, then he moves his hand.
Yeah.
What did you feel?
It's very sensual.
Very sensual. You feel all this energy inside of you, right? It doesn't have to be deep and strong, but it could be, and you would still accept a strong touch because you were united in breath. When you breathe like that, communication is much easier. You know, if you have something on your chest that you want to tell him, and you've been hiding it because you don't want to hurt his feelings, whatever, after you've been breathing, you know, for about 3-4 minutes like this, you know exactly what to say and how to say it, saying, I have to tell you something that, you know, so that it's out of my way so I can love you more. Would you be willing to listen to me now? What would you say?
Oh, I'd be open to it.
That's right.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Because in that moment you come from the heart. Now I'm going to lie down and I'm going to show you the ocean breath and how it really works. So, and then you can do it yourself and see how it feels for you. Would that be okay? So here's my belly. It's so I'm going to put my hands on my belly so that you see. Actually, it is better when the legs are up because the back is relaxed. And especially you said that you had some back problems. This will help you tremendously when you relax your legs like that, feet on the floor, and you feel it's all relaxed. Okay, so my hands are here about my fingers around the pubic bone area and my palms on the hip bones right there. And so I have this beautiful place here that you need to look at and see what I'm doing. Do you notice that I'm not breathing up here?
Yeah.
So I'm just breathing. I'm taking in the breath as though it comes in from the ocean and my sex center into my belly. And when it reaches about the heart chakra, it goes back into the ocean. Does not go up into the brain because the mind, the critical mind, is still too awake right now, not relaxed enough to let you be at peace. And it will interrupt to say, oh, this is crazy, why should you make sounds like that? You know, there's always some critic up there telling you that you shouldn't be doing this. And in order not to allow that in, to intrude, right, we keep that breath circular and moving along like a wave. The wave never stops, right? The wave goes up, doesn't stop at the crest, and right away falls down. It takes about a second or so to go into the ocean, back again, and so on, right? So you see that I don't hold the breath, I continue. So watch again. See, I'm in there. I can massage my belly while I'm exhaling. And the liver. And the spleen. And the whole intestinal area. And I could reach practically the G-spot from under the pubic bone from the outside when I go down. Watch how I do it. Yeah, and it's so easy because on the exhalation, nothing hurts. You can do this one with closed eyes because you go internal into yourself so that your consciousness is inside your belly. Yes! Yeah, you go. Yeah, allow yourself to make a soft sound of the vowel ah, like Arya, Alleluia, all those good names, Mama, there. It's so relaxing, isn't it? And when you are in unison and synchronization like that, you can read each other's mind. And you don't even have to talk much, and you know exactly where to put your hands, what to do. So beautiful. So you learned it so fast. You're really incredible. Most people resist more than So you're going to start looking at each other's, which is very intimate. You know, the soft look, relaxed mouth. And it's very tempting not to start to kissing right now, right? Because it's so intimate. But the idea is to feel each other's belly. And feel how beautiful it is to feel that belly, like a wave going up and down. And you feel the warmth of your lover come into your body and just merge. Dressed, it doesn't, energy moves anyway. And the sound now, let the sound come. There you go. That's wonderful. That's so incredibly beautiful. Hearing a man making those sounds is as pleasant to a woman as it is for a man even hearing her. And I'm so glad that you don't have the preconception that men do not make pleasurable sounds.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful to see the transformation in your face and in your body. It really is beautiful. And how about hugging you as well? Would that be okay with you? If I hug you?
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
sure. Just making sure.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
To love deeply in one direction makes us more loving in all others.
Never have a relationship based upon someone giving you good sex. That really doesn't add up. Have a relationship because you care about the person. You want to spend quality time with the person. And the measure of a good relationship is you can care about someone and be with them without any sex. If you can't be with someone without sex, then you don't have a good relationship. And the people who are insecure in themselves who think, all right, if I give really good sex, I'm going to get something in return, then they're making an exchange. The exchange is I'm going to give you sex, and in return I'm going to get what? Security? I'm going to get someone to accommodate my needs. I'm going to get someone who will be my therapist or listen to me. I'm going to get someone who will share my grief or burden. And this happens every day, all over the world. But we've made it a fine art here in our society. So you better understand what is the point of the sex you're having with someone. And to know that, you better know the person. And you better be honest in what you're doing. Because the most expensive sex you can ever have is the sex that is had for some ulterior motive. All right? So have sex because you're playing with life and you're exuberant and you're sharing it with someone who is compatible, you're in the same rhythm, the same energy. You can trust the person, they will not betray. They will not betray that trust. And then be open and honest. When you're open and honest, then you're not critical of someone. You can say yes or no, you agree or disagree, in which case a person then knows where you stand. The trouble is people live with ambiguity, especially about our sexuality. A woman I know knew, this was going back about 10 years ago, it turns out one day that she told me that she was a call girl. And this was a little surprising because this was an extremely successful artist. And I said, why? What do you gain from it? And then she told me. But it wasn't what she told me about herself that I found interesting. It's what she told me about her clients. Her clients were very powerful CEOs of major corporations. And I said, what is the exchange? She said, it's simple. Initially, it was sex, and it wasn't good. But then it was very clear shortly thereafter these men were not with me because they wanted sex. They were with me because they had no one else in their life that they could confide in. And we ended up not having sex after a short period of time. We'd go to a restaurant and talk, and he would tell me all about his life. And I said, why didn't he ask his wife and other people to talk about these problems? Couldn't trust them. I said, what do you mean? When someone knows that you have a weakness and you're perceived of as the strong, dominant person, the weakness they'll use against you. And these people were so terrified that their weakness, and they perceived their sexuality as a weakness, which it is not, would be used against them, that they trusted no one. And as one, she was telling me about, without identifying the person, which I would not have wanted to know, but she was telling me about one person who's very powerful at the UN, and said that this man said to her, when she asked a similar question, my therapist has nothing to lose. The people in the world I live in and work in would use anything they could against me to gain the power I have. You do not know how competitive the workplace is when people are so dominant and dynamic. They may associate, they may go to dinners together, but at the end of the day, they're all sharks looking for any blood, including each other's, and they'll prey on you. So she said it was more often than not just social activities and being a listening post. I found that rather interesting because I'm wondering then how many other people who don't have call girls but then talk with other people about the frustrations in their life, but they're afraid to talk with their very partner about it because they're afraid that their partner would not understand or use it against them or find some weakness in them or perceive weakness because of that. So you have to deal with that as well.
What kind of relationship do I want? What quality of relationship am I ready for? What really enriches me? What fulfills me? Where is it going from here? Is it an empty kind of thing? Have I had enough of the empty kind? Would I like something that's more fulfilling or that's more rich? And so it comes more from an internal decision rather than external kind of injunctions that come to us. And I think so many people do live by external injunctions rather than going within and seeing what really is fulfilling.
When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I was sexually abused and subsequently terrorized afterwards. And it has created some problems with my life.
Could you say more about how it has?
There's been a lot of free-floating anxiety, a lot of fear, and I get very defensive when I get in certain interpersonal relationships.
Applied kinesiology is often used by nutritionists to determine whether a supplement is good for you or different foods would be good for you or different vitamins or minerals, and if your arm becomes stronger, you know it's going to be helpful to you. Our purpose to use it is that his inner wisdom will know what is true and what is false, and his arm will become strong when he knows a statement to be true, and his arm will become weak if he knows a statement from his innermost wisdom to be false. So what we're wanting to do is that he's told us how this early experience of sexual abuse and the aftermath of it with the threats have really carried forth in his life. So what I'm going to do now is to use muscle testing from applied kinesiology to identify, to get verification as to how much disturbance remains with him from that era and how much that's affecting his life today, and if it's cleared, whether that would be of significant help to him and feeling freer and more trusting in current relationships. So let's test that out if we could. If you would extend your arm, you don't have a shoulder problem or anything.
No, not necessarily.
We don't want to do that. So I just want to see if we're getting a good distinction, first of all.
Okay.
Say I'm wearing a blue shirt. Would you make that statement?
Yeah, you were wearing a blue shirt.
Say I'm wearing a green shirt.
You're wearing a green shirt.
Okay, you knew the statement to be true and false.
That's
and
true.
You felt the difference in your
Yeah,
arm
I did
very
actually
clearly,
feel
didn't
the
you?
difference, yes.
We're in New York City right now.
Yes, we are.
We are in San Francisco.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so you got a good, clear distinction.
Right.
And so what I'd like to see now is to, what is the degree of disturbance that's still with you on a scale of 1 to 10 from that experience? That is, how much is it still with you, interfering with your life today? And if you pick a number on a scale, 10 being the strongest you can imagine, 0 being no disturbance whatsoever still with you, what number do you think it would be?
Well, I think it would have to be closer to maybe 7.
Let's try it. Say it's a 7.
It's a 7.
Say it's less than a 7.
It's less than a 7.
It's greater than a 7.
It's greater than a 7.
It's an 8.
It could be an 8.
It's a 9.
It's a 9.
It's a 10.
It's a 10.
It's less than a 10.
It's less than a 10.
It's a 9.
It's a 9.
Yeah, we've got a much, it's less than a 9.
Less than a 9.
Yeah, we got a much clearer, strong arm at the 9, don't we?
Yes.
So it's not quite the strongest it could be, but it's pretty strong there. And you would like to be free of that, the effects of that trauma in your life today.
That's very true, yes.
Now, often, even though we consciously want to be free of something like that, we may have internal barriers to letting it go because at some level, as a little kid, we think it's protecting us or saving us. It's going to be safer not to let it go. And in order to do the clearing of that trauma, the effects of that trauma, we need to make sure there's no logjam in the stream, that there are no barriers to letting it go first. So I'm going to make a series of statements I'd like to muscle test.
Okay.
Say, I want to be free of the effects of this trauma.
I want to be free of the effects of this trauma.
I want to keep these effects.
I want to keep these effects.
You do want to be free of it then?
I do want to be free.
Say, I deserve to be free of it.
I deserve to be free of it.
I don't deserve it.
I don't deserve it.
Oh, a little stronger on that side, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So bring your right hand up over the thymus gland.
Okay.
And go in a circle like this, clockwise, looking off on the outside, and repeat these words after me. I deeply love and accept myself.
I deeply love and accept myself.
Even if it's not safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
Even if it's not safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
I deeply love and accept myself.
I deeply love and accept myself.
Even if I've drawn that conclusion.
Even if I've drawn that conclusion.
And I deeply love and accept myself.
And I deeply love and accept myself.
Even if I still think it's true.
Even if I still think it's true.
All right, let's see if we've reversed that or not. Say, I deserve to be free of the effects of this trauma.
I deserve to be free of the effects of this trauma.
I don't deserve it.
I don't deserve it.
Oh, we reversed that, didn't we?
It does feel that way. Yes, it does, really.
It's hard to believe it goes that quickly.
Yeah.
So let's check this out. It's safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
It's safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
It's not safe.
It's not safe.
Let's double check that. We're not getting a clear distinction this time. Say it's safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
It's safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
Resist as much as you can. It's not safe.
It's not safe.
Resist. That's much stronger. Not safe, too.
Okay.
And that would tie in with what you were talking about, because you weren't supposed to speak, and you weren't.
Yeah.
And so we'd imagine that you might have concluded some feelings about undeservedness and safety, both, as a result of that trauma, and have been carrying them with you ever since.
Yeah.
So bring your right hand up here and say, I deeply love and accept myself, as you go in the circle with it.
I deeply love and accept myself.
Even if it's not safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
Even if it's not safe to be free of the effects of this trauma.
I deeply love and accept myself.
I deeply love and accept myself.
Even if I've drawn that conclusion.
Even if I've drawn that conclusion.
And I deeply love and accept myself.
And I deeply love and accept myself.
Even if I still think it's true.
Even if I still think it's true.
Okay, let's check this. It's safe for me to be free of these effects.
It's safe for me to be free of these effects.
It's not safe.
It's not safe to be free.
It will benefit me and everybody else to be free of them.
It will benefit me and everyone else to be free of them.
It won't benefit anyone.
It won't benefit anyone.
And it's okay to let go of this part of my old identity.
And it's okay to let go of this part of my old identity.
I'm afraid of letting it go.
I'm afraid of letting it go.
A little stronger on that side, too,
Yeah.
isn't it? All right, let's do the thymus rub again.
It's okay to let go of this part of my old identity.
Not okay.
It's not okay to let go.
Oh, we reverse that, too.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine as a child that when you're developing your identity, you draw those conclusions. It's not safe. I don't deserve. Then it begins to become our identity. I'm one who doesn't deserve it, or I'm one for whom things won't be safe. And so that's important to be taken care of in order to free yourself of the effects of that trauma. Then let's see how strong the commitment is to releasing it. Say, I will be free of the effects of this trauma.
I will be free of the effects of this trauma.
I won't be free of them.
I won't be free of the effects.
And I'll do what it takes to be free of them.
I will do what it takes to be free of them.
I won't do what it takes.
I won't do what it takes to be free.
I'd like to be free of them right now.
I'd like to be free of them right now.
I want to keep them a little while longer.
I want to keep them a little while longer.
No, you don't want to keep them.
No,
do you?
no.
I think one thing that's important to see, and I'd like to tell the audience about that, is that it's not important for him to relive these traumas in order to release them. In fact, to relive them and talk about them at length could be a way of reactivating them and rehearsing and intensifying them rather than releasing them. And so our purpose is not to make him suffer in order to be free, which would actually maybe do the opposite, but to just release that information that's encoded. It's a different way of viewing ourselves and who we are in the world. It's based on one theory in physics called field theory, where the whole universe is just one field of information. It's all encoded information. And what part of it you focus on is what's manifested. And so in a sense, it's almost like that, or like the web. You have your search engine, goes into the place where the information is there, and you can access that information. Here we're doing it for the purpose of deleting it, like within your computer.
Sure.
And so that's essentially what we were doing, is helping you do something akin to pressing the delete button on the emotional charge attached to those experiences. That doesn't mean you won't remember the experience, but you're freer of the emotional charge that was connected with it.
There are 5 stages of abandonment, just like there are 5 stages of grief, and they're similar to each other. They overlap because they're both about loss, but abandonment is different in that there's usually rejection and betrayal involved. So the first stage is shattering, when you realize that your relationship is torn. Shattering might occur because you go into a restaurant and let's say you're a man and you see your wife with another man sitting at a table, and your heart stops and your mouth gets dry and you go into shattering. And then later on she says, oh, but that was my boss. He took me out to dinner to give me a raise. And then your heartbeat goes back to normal and you relax. Shattering is the moment when you realize that your relationship is torn. It can be a false fear, but if you are going through a breakup, you can stay shattered for weeks, and it can be extremely difficult to get through. People have suicidal feelings. Of course, these are not feelings they should act on because they're temporary feelings, but it's real torment to go through the shattering phase. Next is withdrawal. During withdrawal, you're in withdrawal from your body's own opiates, because when you're in a relationship, there's a flow of your own internal endorphins, your own opiates. And when you go through a breakup, your opiates cease to flow, that particular class of opiates, and you go into opiate withdrawal, just like heroin withdrawal. You have flu-like symptoms. You're going through real hell. And just like a heroin addict who's a junkie looking for a fix. But instead of looking for a heroin fix, the person in withdrawal from an abandonment relationship is looking for a love fix. And it's extremely difficult. Then the most significant stage is internalizing, which is when you beat yourself up and blame yourself for the abandonment. You're assuming that you've been left because you're not good enough, you're not beautiful enough, you're not successful enough, you're not tall enough, something. You blame yourself, and you feel so weak because it's painful to go through abandonment that you begin to think that it's because you're weak that you lost the person. And meanwhile, you're feeling weak because you're going through an abandonment, but you get very confused into thinking that because you're overreacting to the abandonment, that must be why you've been abandoned, because you're so weak. And so you really blame yourself, and you do damage to your self-esteem. Self-esteem is self-esteem. You give it to yourself, and you also take it away from yourself. You do really a bad job on yourself during that internalizing. Then rage is when the anger toward being abandoned, instead of directing it toward yourself and beating yourself up and creating this horrible depression, you begin to get angry at the world, at your friends because they don't understand. They tell you let go and move forward, and you can't. You get angry at your abandoner. You get angry at your situation. It's a good sign when you start to get angry, but you need to use the rage energy constructively. Taking retaliations you get very little satisfaction from that. What you get satisfaction from is changing your life in a positive way, using the rage energy to make changes in your life. And then the final stage is lifting, where you kind of have periods, intervals of peacefulness between these torments, and you begin to notice spring flowers, or you begin to notice you're attracted to people again, and you can lift above the abandonment. But when you lift, you need to bring your feelings with you. Otherwise, you sort of lift out of your feelings and become more remote and more callous than before. Many people's abandoners were people who lifted out of a previous abandonment but didn't bring their feelings with them and have kind of lost sensitivity to their own feelings and to the other person's.
But what happens if there is still energy from the past relationship lingering? My belief and my advice to people usually is that you need to make space for new relationship. You need to bring something new, you have to have empty space. And then there will be fullness. To create fullness, you need to have emptiness. If you have still lingering feelings towards someone, you're not ready for a relationship. How do you clean space? I have a number of exercises. First of all, I ask a person if they're really ready to let go of the old relationship. And if they're not, okay, they may work on it. Work on going back to that relationship. And if they say, no, it's not possible, then you have to make space. Then you get rid of all the objects. Objects carry energy. You get rid of all the objects that belong to the person. You don't have photographs on your walls or next to your bed. You call this person and say, please don't call me again. Now, is it possible to have a friendship after you had a love relationship and sexual relationships? Yes, absolutely. but only after both partners, former partners, find a loving relationship elsewhere. Because if there is still longing in one of the ex-partners, you cannot have a friendship relationship. It's hypocrisy. There is still longing. So you separate yourself on the physical level, you send away the objects, you give them back, or just get rid of them, including jewelry. But with jewelry, sometimes you like jewelry, then I suggest earth cleans the energy. If you have some article of jewelry that you love and it belonged to this person, or this person gave you, you put it in the earth for 7 days. You purify the energy.
Do not judge any woman that's currently in your life with anyone from the past. That is unfair to the woman in your life, and it does not represent anything but this exaggerated notion that somehow you can stereotype an experience and all the people in it. That'd be like going into Central Park, you get mugged by some young guy, and suddenly you're afraid of all young guys. You know, you get into a business deal and you lose money, and suddenly you're afraid to do a business deal. All right? You eat in a Italian restaurant, and someone burns the food, and now you're afraid to eat in an Italian restaurant. Only judge the person you're with by what they do, not by what anyone else has ever done to you. All right? Because that person is a unique individual. We're all unique individuals. So let us honor our uniqueness. So I do not ever look at one person as being representative of anyone else. They're representative of themselves. That relationship, that connection will either rise or fall based upon what we are sharing, no one else. How do you go about finding this relationship? It is relatively simple. Now this may be confusing, but this is one of the easiest lessons in life to learn. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. All right? And you will know if it's right because you will feel it before you will understand it. We each have this capacity to express energy that goes out, gets a message, connects with another energy, and comes back into us. When we come back in, all we have to do is understand how to properly and honestly decipher it. And it's the understanding by deciphering the energy that we understand the real communication. And the trouble is we think because we've not had a good relationship with someone that somehow that person's wrong or bad. No, you can have two good people who are not meant to connect with each other. It just means two people shouldn't have been together. Stop blaming one or the other. This whole idea of blaming, chronic blaming, is a pathological state of dysfunction. And it's a manipulation. Remember, you couldn't be a chronic blamer unless you'd mastered it. But once you master the art of blaming someone, then you're locked and loaded, and that's dangerous. And you'll feel it, you'll see it, it'll show signs. It means that anything that doesn't go this person's way, immediately, boom, they hit you, they hit you. They try to make you feel bad about yourself. They try to demean you. They try to make you feel guilty if you're not immediately trying to reconcile with them at their level. And often people do exactly that. Instead of stepping back and saying, why should there be conflict in this relationship? No matter what you share, no matter what you sacrifice, it will not change the nature of the person. It just diminishes how much you're going to be in conflict. But when someone is that imbalanced, that insecure, even the stupidest things they'll become insecure about. They'll start projecting that anything that you're not sharing with them somehow is justifying making them angry because you're sharing it with someone else. These are extremely insecure people fearing loss. And therefore you're the crazy glue that's supposed to hold them together. You can't hold someone else together. You can't make someone else whole by what you are. You can't make enlightenment come into a person's life. You can't be the light in someone else's darkness. You can't be the love that's unconditional in someone else's conditional response. And don't be fooled when people say they love you. When someone says they love you, more often than not, is they need you. Unconditional love accepts you for who you are without any demands. If I love unconditionally, I don't care who you are, you're going to be able to see me. I don't care if you're rich or poor, I'm going to help you. I don't care what your background. That's why I've never had a problem with race, because I don't see you as a race. I don't see you as being black or Latino. That's irrelevant. That it has no relevance to anything. The color of your skin does not determine who you are as a person. You're a member of the human race. You're a human spirit. We are all connected with the same thread of life. We all come from the same origins. The fact that you may be one nationality, I may be another, you may speak one language, I'm another, that merely means that we have more interesting things to dialogue on, to share what makes us unique to each other. But it should never be something that excludes us. What excludes people is when they try to make you feel that somehow there's something wrong with you by not being open to them and what they're sharing. But your intuition is going to read what they're sharing. And that intuition never is wrong. Never is wrong. That's the spiritual self. And it's sent the radar out and it's saying, if you connect with this person, with what they need, you're engaging in a toxic relationship. It'll affect every part of your life. So be aware of that. This whole idea of jealousy and envy and insecurity is stupid. It is stupid. And when someone says, well, I'm jealous of her or I'm jealous of him, why? If they want to be with someone else, then say thank you, because they've shown you they have no interest in being with you. All right? Don't go fighting over someone that someone else is going to be with. That's the dumbest thing in the world. I remember once I was dating a girl in high school, and this guy says, hey, Gary, I'm going to meet you outside. What do you mean you're going to meet me outside? Well, we're going to fight. Why are we going to fight? Yeah, because I'm dating Tanya. You are? Okay, well, good. What do you mean good? Well, good. I'm glad you're happy. Oh, no, you're going to fight me. You're an idiot. I'm not going to fight you. You know? Besides, if they hit you in the head, there's not going to be anything injured because there's nothing in that brain of yours. Oh, yeah, I grew up with some real strange people. But I said, and then it went all over the school. Noel's not going to fight for his girlfriend. I said, she's no longer my girlfriend. She's his girlfriend, so let them be happy together. I'll find someone else that is going to be with me. And they just couldn't understand that. And they couldn't understand that it's never worth fighting for someone, because it means the person isn't connected with you. Let it go. Go on with your life, unless you're attached to country western music. I lost my dog, I lost my horse, I lost my truck, I lost my rifle, lost my wife, woe is me. Yeah, yeah. Tune over to some other music, get your life back. Could you imagine country western music that only had positive themes to them? Nobody buy it.
You know, we hear about follow your gut, but people who have unresolved abandonment and who are caught up in these patterns cannot follow their gut when it comes to attraction. When they find themselves deeply attracted to someone, that's when they have to say, there must be something wrong here, and they have to learn to go the other way. What people who are caught in these patterns have to do is learn to get to know someone whom they're not particularly attracted to, perhaps, at first, and to give that person a chance to unfold, to actually allow a relationship to develop that's much more sober and not based on infatuation. Some people can go straight from infatuation into a relationship, but some people go from infatuation into abandonment or some other kind of horrible separation anxiety. So when you find that you're in a pattern like that, then don't follow your attraction. Instead, follow your good wisdom. Follow the wisdom that you're accumulating about who is safe to attach to.
In life, it is not our positive qualities alone that determine what we do and how far we go in our fulfillment. It is whether or not we have resolved our limiting factor. And I call it the limiting factor in human nature. Each and every one of us has limitations. Each and every one of us have crisis points. Each and every one of us has issues that we have not resolved. And yet we do not bear these openly. We wait till we're in a relationship, and then one day they start to occur. And then we've already committed to the relationship, and then we think, well, okay, all right, so one thing I can deal with. And then suddenly it's the second thing you got to deal with. And the quality of that relationship will be either enhanced or diminished and ended based upon how many other things you find out about a person that suddenly are dumped into what you thought was a real nice situation. But people sell themselves to you. People are desperate. You know, you can get someone to give you a great resume. You read a resume, you think, my goodness, my God, you're the best person in the world to work here. And then the person's there a week and saying, you can't do anything. You lied to me. This is bullshit. And that happens. Any of you own a business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People oversell themselves. And especially now, should I be honest? No, I better not be honest. You know, I'll wait a while and then let the truth come out. That's the limiting energy. And the limiting energy is always a negative energy. And the negative energy is a displacing energy. It displaces positive energy. Remember, no one throws you out of their life because you're too loving and too wonderful and too funny and too joyful and too sexy. Yeah, get out of my life, you loving, passionate, dynamic, sexual energy. I can't stand it. No, it's, hey, I don't need any more of this, goodbye. Well, what do you mean? Didn't we? Yeah, we did this, it was fun, and that was fun, and I enjoyed this, but you haven't resolved any of these other issues, and they now are blocking the positive energy. You're always going to be terminated in any relationship, from work or personal, because of what you have not resolved, not because of what you have. It's what we don't do right, and that causes not what we do right. So when we're really honest, and we're honest up front, then a person has at least an opportunity to say, okay, I can handle this, or no, I can't, I don't want it, it's too much. And just think of how many mistakes we've made because we assumed that everything would be all right in time, and so every time they showed us something else, we just kept adapting to it. You adapt to someone else's negativity and limitation, you become a negative and toxic relationship. That doesn't mean you can't hang out with someone, it just means it's not going to be fulfilling. And then we compromise because everybody else compromises. There's no perfect relationship. You're too old, you can't start over. I say nonsense. I say make your priorities clear, make them known. My priorities are my work, my healing, my books and documentaries, radio shows, and everything else I'm doing. That's my priority, and that's a lot. Now to squeeze a relationship into that would be absurd. It would be dysfunctional, it would be dishonest, and it would not give someone the quality they want. In any relationship I've been in, I've only been in a monogamous relationship with someone that I only shared heart energy with, and no one else. I don't believe you share your heart. I believe that's what's unique to what you share with another human being. And yet, those would still be around, but at some point, the limitation came out. Give up your career. You've done enough. Stop spending all this time lecturing and helping people. Be home at night. Well, I'm counseling 15 people tonight. Yeah, but what about me? And let's have children. I have a daughter. I'm happy with my daughter. I don't need to have another child to bear witness to my life. Your life is more important than just having children. Children are important, but they shouldn't be the reason you're alive. And think of how many people have children. Those children now are victims of people who had them for the wrong reason. Have a child for the right reason, not the wrong reason. And then give quality time to whatever you have in your life. And if you can't give quality time to what's important, then reprioritize your time. I don't watch television except rare programs. I don't listen to radio, ever. I don't read stupid things in books and papers. I read, I'm a voracious reader. I spend quality time on what's important to me, and therefore I'm able to self-actualize a lot. But I also know the two things I won't do. I won't take on a responsibility or a project that I cannot give my undivided attention to, and in a joyful way where there's a natural energy, and I will not bring anyone in my life that I know that I cannot give quality time to. And the first thing that happens is people get so enamored by the quality of what you're doing with your life, they think that somehow you're going to then make them a part of what you give your time to. And with me, that's a mistake. And you want to know something? A lot of other people, it's a mistake, and they're not willing to look at it. And then they start having all kinds of conflict. And that's one way to resolve the conflict. Don't put yourself in a position to have it. So when I have my relationship, it will only be because I've resolved a lot of other issues, I've finished a lot of other things, and then I give myself quality time for that person. Now, in the interim, what I have is I have friendships. I have people I can do anything I could do with a wife or a partner, I can do with my friends. All right? And I don't believe that I have to sanctify something for society in order to engage my energy with someone else. And as long as that energy is positive and is equally beneficial and fulfilling to both people on whatever level you share, then you have a quality relationship. But understand that relationship can change, its needs can change, or the weakest link in that relationship can manifest, and then you simply can't resolve it. You go on with your life. We have a hard time going on with our lives. We somehow feel that if a relationship fails, our life fails. And that's why I believe that all relationships should not be about two people. Relationships should be about a third entity. Two people deciding what they're willing to contribute to each other in a relationship, and what they're not willing to contribute. What is uniquely their own, their space, their mind, their life. And if you don't make that distinction, then a person believes that if you're in their life, you own them, you control them. You can say anything to them. You can be hurtful or spiteful, you can be negative or toxic. And who Who has treated you the worst in what they've said to you? A stranger or a person in a relationship? Right? And a person in a relationship knows or thinks they know how to hurt you. So they will say the worst things possible and blame you for causing them to say it. And that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. So when that happens, and if it happens more than once, don't allow it to happen a third time. All right? Because then you're the fool, not them. They're just playing upon your guilt or shame. And I don't believe that's a valid reason to allow anyone to assault you. So what we learn is reprioritize your life. Only keep those things in your life that are important and that you have committed yourself to, and you must see them through. Anything else that's taking away your time or energy, surrender it, no matter what anyone else thinks. Get out of this idea that somehow because you've been doing something, you have to continue doing it. It's not important who you disappoint. What's important is that you disappoint yourself because you can't be honest in the connections you have. Even if you have to give stuff up, as I have, that have been extremely valuable. One of my friends says, "Why in the world would you give up that woman? She is phenomenal." I said, "Well, on many levels she is. But the weak link had not been resolved. And now what is phenomenal is being thwarted by what is not. So I'm willing to surrender the relationship, and she can go on and have a relationship with whoever is going to meet her needs without the conflict. With me, there's always going to be a conflict because I'm the wrong person to ask to give an ultimatum. It's your career and what you do versus the relationship. It's always going to be what I do, not the relationship. No relationship is as important as my life. None. Nor will it ever be. So I can only be with people who understand me, and their life is the most important thing, and a relationship is a secondary commitment to what you're willing to share. And an unfulfilled person, an empty person, a dysfunctional person will never understand that. And by the way, you'll always understand you're dealing with such a person when you have to explain the same argument 1,000 times, and they still don't get it. All right? They're not stupid. They just refuse to get it because you're not agreeing with them. And that's another thing we do. We say, we're not communicating. We're not communicating. Oh, yeah, we're communicating. I'm just not agreeing with you. If I agreed with you, oh, we have great communication.
If somebody is not meeting your needs, the ones that are important to you, get out. You cannot afford to stay. It will harm you to stay in a relationship where your important needs are not being met. And you can't change the other person. But what you can do is you can set forth the conditions under which you will have a relationship with them. That's your power. When you talk about empowerment, that's where your power is. If I'm empowered, if I can tell you these are the conditions I'll have the relationship with, what are the conditions under which you'll have a relationship with me? And if we meet together, we're going to have a good relationship. If those needs are not met in functional ways, we're going to probably try to get them met in dysfunctional ways. We're going to be disempowered. We will not stay emotionally healthy, and probably we will not stay physically healthy either. How can you have relationships that meet your needs and create agreements within that relationship? You know, are we going to be monogamous? Are we going to have other partners? How long is this relationship going to last? A relationship is simply the meeting of each other's needs. If you have needs I can meet and I have needs that you can meet, we're going to have a relationship. If those needs are clear and we've talked about them, they're probably going to be functional needs and we'll have a good relationship. So we can discuss things like being faithful, how important that is, whether we're looking for a long-term relationship with marriage or a short-term relationship. And that's between us. Our agreements. That's not for anybody outside of us to condemn. So you craft the relationships according to your needs and theirs, and that's the basis of morality, is making those agreements between the two of you and sticking to them, not what other people impose from some odd ideas that they get from religion or wherever they get it from. Each of us has different boundaries in many areas, and we need to discover what those boundaries are and express them and make certain that the people around us tell us what their boundaries are, so we aren't always having to guess, you know, did I do the right thing? Did I, you know, are they going to leave me because of what I did there? Or are they going to be angry or, you know, emotionally withdraw? We need to know what the rules are so that we can then be comfortable and be safe and stop guessing.
In the 60s, they were right. Make love, not war. They were right.
Is man truly monogamous?
First off, yes, depending upon your life energy. The dynamics, the creative assertive, a dynamic assertive and dynamic aggressive are always going to have people in their lives. They're always going to have people. But they will not need multiple sexual partners. They may choose to, but it's not an absolute need. Others can be completely monogamous and happy and fulfilled in that monogamy, especially the adaptive supportives, the adaptive assertives, and the dynamic supportives. But it is not the nature that I have found for the other dynamic energies and the creative assertives to say that one person is the only person that's going to be in their life for life. What it frequently is that one person will be the person and only person they'll show their heart energy with for however long that lasts. But if that energy is broken, if it gets out of alignment, then it is easier, more likely that a dynamic would say goodbye. The others will stay and suffer. How long have you been married? 40 years. You happy? No, we're not happy. You know? Well, why are you together? Well, because, you know, the kids expect it when they come home, you know, at New Year's and Christmas. All right? If something doesn't work, and if it's not going to work, surrender the energy and appreciate the experiences and the time and caring and sharing that you had. Leave every passage with remarkable moments intact. Surrender non-remarkable moments so you have more remarkable moments you can create. Surrender jealousy. Surrender envy. If someone's not in your life, don't be angry because someone else is. If someone doesn't want me in their life, I'm not angry about that. Hey, if they want someone else, that's their right to have someone else. I'm not going to fret over that. And I wouldn't want to put myself in someone's life who didn't want me there. What would be the point of that? That's the whole thing about, you know, well, I'm nobody because someone doesn't love me anymore. Well, get over it. You know, you're fine. You're no different. The fact that you can't share the same things with that person means you can share something else with someone else. And you open yourself up for another connection. And different passages last different points of time. And remember, it's just how in sync and how much of a natural rhythm you have with someone else and how long that lasts.
Speaking metaphorically, how many people are in the bedroom while we're having sex?
There may be any number of people metaphorically in the bedroom. We talk about sort of voices in your head saying, that's bad, this is good, you got to do this, whatever. So obviously the bedroom is very populated. And in addition, there's another really interesting aspect to this. And that is that we don't see each other for who we are in many cases, particularly if we've been traumatized as a child. We see people mostly as mother or father or somebody else that we spent a lot of time with as a child. The brain only has the capacity to sort of cubbyhole people. The brain cubbyholes people in our society. And the child doesn't have that many people around them to sort of learn how to relate to. So we learn how to relate to dad and mom and maybe even our kindergarten teacher. But we don't learn in our society with this nuclear family. We don't learn how to create relating modes with lots and lots of people. So when we're in the bedroom, what's really scary is we may be making love to dad, we may be making love to mom, no matter what gender we are, we may be making love to the person from our childhood who is perhaps hardest to connect to, and we're still trying to connect to them, and sex is simply a way of connecting to them. And that may be pleasurable or that may feel pretty bad, but until we have an awareness and work with the other person so we begin to see them as who they really are, because they meet our needs and we can feel safe and we begin to see them as the other person, this may very well happen. So you got to work really hard to be in bed with the person who's actually the person you want to be with, rather than as dad or mom or great Aunt Sue.
What's happening within our bodies while we're in hot pursuit?
The tendency that people have to pursue unavailable partners really has a lot of biochemical basis. When you're in a relationship, there's a steady flow of a type of opiate. It's an endorphin. We all know the runner's high, the endorphin from the runner's high. And there's an endorphin or an opiate, the body's own opium system, that is produced when we're in a relationship. And when the relationship ends and there's separation, we go into endorphin withdrawal because the opiate is discontinued and we actually go into withdrawal. But instead of craving a drug like heroin, we're craving the person. We want a love fix that we can't get. And we get in touch with a feeling of craving. And that produces a different type different type of biochemistry in the body, a different type of addictive process. So after you've been through this kind of a trauma, you find yourself seeking relationships that keep that kind of biochemistry going, that kind of strung out, the biochemistry of the strung out junkie looking for the next heroin fix. And people can stay in that cycle, in that kind of biochemical addictive cycle for a very long time until they finally get a handle on the pattern that they're in and they can finally put a stop to it. When people begin to recognize that they're in patterns where they're stuck pursuing unavailable partners, or they're stuck in cycles of abandonment, or they're stuck in relationships where there just isn't enough love, when they finally recognize that they're in that situation, that is a perfect time to get into therapy or get into a support group, because other people and feedback that you get from other people can really help give you the strength and the insight to move forward. But people need to be very determined. One has to be very goal-directed at that point in order to break the patterns, because the patterns are deeply ingrained. They're really much tougher to break than people realize. Just realizing, oh, I'm attracted to unavailable people, I must stop that, doesn't change the body's reaction to the unavailable person. So it really requires a lot of self-determination.
What role does the brain play in creating desire?
Oh, the brain plays a huge role in creating desire. Yes, we can, even our associative connections, a certain look that a person has, a certain way of dressing, a certain kind of clothing, a certain way of moving, but they all are affected by our previous learning experiences. What kind of things we found might be present in somebody who was a warm, loving person when I was a child. I think, for example, of a colleague of mine in Brazil when I was doing some teaching in Brazil a number of years ago. We were sitting in a restaurant with him and his wife, and his head kept turning every time a mulatto woman walked past. And I was noticing that, and he noticed that I was noticing it. And he says, "Henry, I've got to tell you something." He says, "You're seeing me look at these mulatto women." He says, "I'm not lusting after them. I'm not trying to pick them up. My wife knows I do this. She sees me doing it. But it comes from an entirely different source." He says that when I was a little boy, my parents weren't home much, including my mother. She was always out running around doing other stuff, and my father was at work. And so we had a housekeeper who was a mulatto woman, who was warm, who was loving, who was affectionate, and she took care of me. And she's the one who really saved my life emotionally. And so every time I see a mulatto woman, my heart just warms up, he said. And so that's why he was looking at mulatto women. Well, we have the same kind of thing. The limbic system in our brains is our primitive brain, and encodings of information get planted there. If it's painful experiences, we have that, and those stay, and they cause us to react irrationally in difficult situations. But on the positive side, if we have a lot of holding, a lot of closeness, a lot of affection, a lot of warmth, loving connections in our early years, then that's going to make it more likely we'll have those kind of feelings accessible to give to someone else. And we will have associative kind of connections to the kind of person we might be attracted to. That might be why one person's attracted to brunettes and somebody else to blondes, or somebody who's heavy, or somebody who's thin, or somebody who's tall, or somebody who's short. Some of those specific connections that people are not understanding could be from those early kind of limbic system imprints.
Gary, I think sex is overrated, so I'm not having any right now. Is that abnormal?
Well, that's why you think it's overrated, because you're not having it. I don't like the movies. I'm not going. Well, everybody else is going to the movies and they like them. Don't make a judgment about what everyone else thinks about sex. Now, in my own life, and I will tell you this, there were 7 years when I was celibate. 7 years. 3 years and 1 year. That's a total of 11 years of complete and total celibacy. Why? Because I chose to put all my energy and to see what would happen if I put all my energy into creating and sharing with others. Having friendships, having loving relationships, but without the need. And would it affect me? And it did not affect me at all. So for a dynamic energy like myself, sex is no big thing. If I don't have it, it's fine. Because I can assure you, anyone in my life is going to be there because they're a unique human being, not because they're uniquely sexual. So for those of you who feel that sex is overrated, if you simply put your energy into being fulfilled, if you can be fulfilled without sexuality, fine, then you're still in balance. If you are frustrated because you're not having sex, then you're not in balance, in which case then sexuality is important to you. All right, and it's different with each person. If someone says, oh, I had sex, 3 times a day, every day of the week, good for them, And, but if someone says, well, I haven't had sex in 6 months, do you feel okay about that? Yeah, I feel okay. Then good for you too, right? Don't try to follow everyone else's idea of what they're doing, how they're doing it, who they're doing it with, where they're doing it. That is meaningless. You're a unique individual in this world. Honor what is important to you and what feels right to you.
How can an adult male utilize his chi energy for sex?
By not having anything else compete with it. If you're going to have sex, clear your mind of everything else. Focus upon what you want to achieve and what you're willing to share and what you're willing to give and what you're willing to receive. You must exchange the energies. If you're afraid of the other person absorbing your energy or taking it or using it, you're not going to have that exchange. And when you have the exchange, that's where both people can cycle the energy back and forth. So focus upon what it is you want to feel and then find a partner willing to share that with you. And don't think about other things. And when you're having sex, stop thinking about everything else going on in your life. I'd like to have a little viewer that could look into everyone's mind as they're having sex and see what they're really thinking about, right? And you would be just amazed at what people are thinking about. I wish the hell this was over. Damn. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, let me think of something to get through this, right? Instead of, wow, I'm glad I'm doing this.
What are the best natural alternatives to Viagra? Can hypnosis effectively improve sexual functioning?
Yes, it can. Regressive hypnosis has done wonders for people suffering, male and female, from loss of libido or functioning. But for a substitute for Viagra, arginine and phosphatidylcholine and choline itself. It'll stimulate a blood flow, creating nitric acid, and it also creates a healthier mood hormone that goes from the brain down to the genitalia.
What happens to male hormones in men over the age of 30?
In the case of hormones, as men age from 30 on, they're losing DHEA, androstenedione, pregnenolone, growth hormones, testosterone. So in reality, there are many hormones, and men who frequently have erectile dysfunction think they need to use testosterone, and they often do not. They just need DHEA and androstenedione or pregnenolone. Now, there's an important role for the brain in sexual health. Men that are very nervous have a serotonin deficiency and they have premature ejaculation. They don't need Viagra or some drug, they need to calm their brain down. Many individuals can't get into the intimacy moment. They need to use inositol or brain calming nutrients, and they need to calm their brain down as well, and they may not, in women, in men, they may not be able to have a proper orgasm or proper release because they're too tense or it may be too quick. So those are some of the key factors, and that's all controlled from the brain. You can pretty much make a person have an orgasm in a minute or 30 minutes, depending on what you do for their brain.
What is the Kundalini?
So the Kundalini is an energy. It's a spiritual energy that's really coiled on the root chakra down there. And it's usually dormant in people because we don't live life. We just go around kind of half awake and half asleep. We are not fully alive. When we are fully alive, Kundalini starts rising. And when we breathe in that way, we remind Kundalini, you can go up and meet your partners up here, you know, and ignite the pineal and the pituitary gland. And so it starts rising and meeting the other chakras, the other energy centers, the power, the love, and the communication, the creativity, and then they kind of create a marriage between the male and the female energy, and they go into very high spiritual places. The body feels almost like a tingling sensation or a chill going up the spine or really hot flames going up the spine, and you can get beautiful firework in your head, and you're over that. The orgasm that happens when the Kundalini rises like that is completely different from the ejaculatory orgasm that people just do to release tension, practically. It's a completely different one. You go beyond time and space. You know, you can be happy and floating for weeks after one of those. So it doesn't happen that often, but if people really want it and work with it, it will move. And the orgasmic reflex that I did before, moving the hips, and the sacral and the cranial pump, moving up the Kundalini, helped tremendously. It helps when you're really in love, and there is a lot of love energy pulling Kundalini up. There are many things that could pull it up. Going into ecstasy sexually will be good. You know, when women have a G-spot massage, sometimes they go into Kundalini. And men can go into Kundalini also by doing that. However, men have it more difficult than women. We can ejaculate anytime we want. We don't lose energy. We don't lose anything. But if they ejaculate, it's gone. It's over, right? So they need to go as close as possible to ejaculation without ejaculating. And to do that, they need to use a controlled breath. It's called the cobra breath. I can give you a little example of it. I'm not going to teach people the cobra breath because I don't know. They need to be purified to use it. But it is about lifting the energy from the sex center into the higher centers with the nose. So you would do it similar to this. And then you hold the energy into the back of the neck, and then you can pump your PC muscles up to send up the energy. And then at the end, you sniff it up to here, and then you release it down. And that will be it. And you can do it as many times as you want. You're building higher and higher orgasms. The urge to ejaculate will be gone by doing just one of those breaths.
Why do people pursue unavailable partners?
Some people seek the emotional candy instead of a real relationship. They actually think they're looking for a relationship, but they're really looking for romance. And romance is what keeps them high. They could be someone very depressed, dissatisfied with their careers. You know, their lives could be kind of in the doldrums, but if they fell in love with somebody, all of a sudden everything is just beautiful and they're happy and they're elated. So that's what they're looking for, that romantic feeling, that infatuated feeling that keeps them high. In order to stay in that feeling, unfortunately, they have to constantly jump from one relationship to the next. So they go through a period of dating where they're looking for someone who makes them feel that chemistry. And who makes them feel that chemistry? Usually someone who's hard to get, someone who's out of reach, someone they have to pursue, because pursuit mode is a hot mode. And so they stay in that hot feeling. But once they actually get into that relationship and it becomes somewhat real, well, that infatuated feeling calms down, and the doldrums of their lives may return to them, or they just may lose interest. And so they keep pursuing the emotional candy of a hard-to-get lover just to stay in that constant high.
Women are often ridiculed and judged for having multiple sex partners. Is it okay to have as many partners as you like?
It may be stereotypical for women to be criticized or for having different sexual partners, to be called different names. First of all, I don't think it was any value for us to call anybody diminishing names, because people are all coming from where they are and they're doing the best they can do to try to live their lives. They need understanding and acceptance from wherever they are. And so a woman who's having multiple sexual partners may do it for a variety of reasons. One may be that she's trying to find love and connection but has not learned another way to do that. Another might be that she likes excitation and stimulation more than she would like to have intimacy. And so that doesn't make it wrong, it just means that's where she is. And she'll have more excitement with new partners and separate partners, but she won't have the satisfaction that goes with deeper intimacy.
How does an older couple jumpstart a sex life that's been dead for 25 years or more?
Bring in a 20-year-old. My God, Henry, look at him. Where have you been? First, understand that all you have to do if you've had a moribund sex life for a long time is because your mind is moribund. All right? Forget the sex. It's what else you're doing. Generally, people who are boring have boring sex lives. People who are dynamic have dynamic sex lives. People who are creative have creative sex lives. People who are adventurers have adventurous sex lives. So sex and the energy of sex is not separated from the rest of our life. It is one and the same. So just understand the person you're dealing with can only share what it is that they have been sharing, except it's shared sexually. So it's relatively simple. Try to make your life more interesting. When you make your life more interesting, by extension, you will have a more interesting sex life.
My husband's not always hard in the bedroom, and I don't want to be aggressive with him and put myself in an uncomfortable situation. What should I do?
Oh my God. Man, that's a wrong relationship there. I'm not going to help you, Henry. All right? And if you can't keep it erect, keep away from me. That's the message coming through there that I'm getting. Part of what makes sex fun is exploring what you can do with your partner to help them enhance how they feel. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to help another person. Think of all the things. If you just spoke the right words into a man's ear, they're going to go hard like that. All right? Just that quick. It has nothing to do with their sexual organ. It has everything to do with this organ. All right? So what are you talking about? What are you sharing? Your fantasies? Erotic fantasies? That is the greatest aphrodisiac.
I've never had an orgasm, even when I've tried masturbating. What's wrong with me?
Many people do not have orgasms. And it has nothing to do, in most cases, with their physiology. Their physiology works just fine. It's their psychology that's not working. And almost always, it's because of fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being ridiculed, fear of doing something dirty, something nasty, something that depreciates who they are or reflects poorly upon the parents or the guardians. That's a person that needs therapy. That's a person that needs non-judgmental humanistic counseling to help them to revalue their own right to be fulfilled.
Can tantric techniques alleviate menopausal symptoms?
You probably know that most women go through menopause, and it is a very difficult time for us because, and I already went through my menopause, you know, and I know that when I was going through the menopause, I was feeling like my life is over. I don't feel my sexual energy anymore. I mean, I was feeling not productive, not more as a woman. I was feeling weaker. Something was missing. But when I started using tantric techniques to get my power back, I started shifting. And the hot flashes lasted probably 3 months for me, coming very, very little, not hard that people have to take off their clothes and on, just a little. I was feeling hot a little bit, I would open the window and that was it. But 3 months, everything was gone. And my sexual energy is actually increased afterwards. And so it's just a moment of transition. It's a transition to to this state of life when you don't have to worry about children. Women don't have to worry about that anymore. They are just moving into another phase of their life, and there is so much richness to it. Most creativity comes after menopause. Before I was too worried about what people think of me to really express what I really felt. After that, I became a better teacher, a better everything. So there is so much to look forward to. If you see that this is just a transition time, and you take care of your health, you take some natural hormones, or the plants that are going to increase the hormonal production.
Do men generally seek out more sexual partners than women?
There's some truth to that, in the fact that men want to spread their genetics as much as possible. They want to spread their genes. So, and women are geared to being with somebody who's actually going to provide for them and the baby. So there is some biological drive for the man to seed as many women as he can, and for the woman to find somebody who will care for her. There's also, if you look at the animal kingdom, and all sorts of studies show that infidelity happens very commonly on both parts, even with monogamous animals, which has made some researchers quite upset, as well as with humans. What is false is that men have a stronger sex drive than women. Women actually have the same, and perhaps even a stronger sex drive than men.
Do you believe in sexual chemistry?
Sexual chemistry is what sex actually is when it's at its best. If you have the right chemistry, you will know it because you will feel it. The energy projects out. I've seen people who have dressed down, not been groomed, and they exude a sensuality. They exude a passion. The passion is an energy, and energy is not constrained when a person's feeling and expressing. It goes out in waves, and you feel it. Before you know the person, before you can even speak with the person, you feel it. Sexual chemistry absolutely exists, and it's important to pay attention to sexual chemistry, because when the chemistry isn't there, but some obligation is there, then you're having obligatory sex, and obligatory sex is just terrible. I don't believe people should be having, well, it's Tuesday night, it's your turn to be on top. All right? Now you say this and I'll say that. No. It's the chemistry that ignites the passion. You have to have a spark before you have the fire. And the chemistry is the spark. And then it just enfolds. Then play with it, nurture it, develop it, grow it, manifest it. But to do that, you've got to get everyone else out of your mind. You got to get all of those conditioned beliefs out of your mind. Well, Gary, that's easy for you to say, but at 50 years of age, and having had 3 kids, and and I've got so many things to do with my life, and I'm very fulfilled in all the other things except my sex. I just don't make it important anymore. And that's a person who becomes what I call the sexual martyr. The person who feels, I don't need it anymore. The sex is a primal need. Having fulfillment is our right. Don't let someone else determine who should dictate your sexual experience.
I do not feel stimulated during foreplay or during intercourse. How do I get interested in sex in general?
It has nothing to do with getting interested. It's a matter of being interested. That's like saying, well, give me 10 things to say, 3 things to wear, 2 things to put on my body, and 8 things to eat before. And then, no, that's the wrong approach. That's what we've been doing. It's not about anything out here that you're going to do. It's about what's in here that hasn't been done. You create the passion. You create the interest. You create what is going to cause you to exude an energy wave. And waves go out with intent. So create the intent. I intend to manifest my deepest sexual passion. Then as you intend that, you throw the energy out. But remember, that energy has to be unencumbered. If you also at the same time put out what you don't want, the world will give you back what you don't want. I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be accused. I don't want to be lost. I don't want to be hurt. Then that's exactly what you get. Remember, the universe will always give you exactly what you ask for, so be very careful what you ask for. People are afraid, I'm afraid of losing stuff, therefore I'm not going to take this risk, or I'm only going to take this because I'm afraid of losing my security. I'm in this relationship because I'm afraid I couldn't get another relationship. I've worked so hard to be in this one. Well, if you've got to work hard to be in a relationship, you better examine the relationship. All right? Because good relationships shouldn't be worked on. They should be engaged and enjoyed. And that goes against everything that we're taught today. Every shrink, every self-empowerment guru from Oprah and all the other people and Dr. Phil, well, no, you got to work on this relationship. Why? Why? Because then I'm going to show that I've made sacrifices and because I'm trying to hold something together that is not holding itself together? If something doesn't hold itself together, maybe it shouldn't be together. All right? But we hate it because we don't want to give up. You know, it's worth fighting for. Why? Why? Is there a shortage of people in the world that you can be happy with? Well, there is, Gary, and I got to stay with this person. I'm not happy with him. Let's be honest. We're not happy. We're going to therapy. Been going to therapy 20 years, twice a week. I hate her. She hates me. But we, you know, we don't have sex, but, you know, obligatory. Occasionally we do. Why? Who says you have to play by these idiotic rules? They manipulate you into believing that you have to do what authority says. That goes back to what I suggested earlier in another lecture. The power of the cult of the professional. And I believe that no one should be a professional about your sexuality, about you. When you decide to think hot, you will be hot. When you decide to get it on, you will get it on. When you open the doors, kick down the doors, then the light comes in and you just feel it. You rev up and suddenly you are vibrating. And sex is a vibration. When you limit the vibration, and some people actually are smart enough that they can control the vibration of the primal energy and throw it up into the heart energy. And suddenly they're only having sex for their heart energy. Big mistake. Big mistake. Don't confuse them. Don't mix these metaphors. When you're having sex, have sex because you are a person that can have a physical and emotional experience when you're participating and when you fulfill yourself. It's not an intellectual exercise.
How do I keep my sex drive alive all the time, especially with demanding jobs and children?
Like anything else, our lives have to be lived in balance. When our lives are lived in balance, then you make room for everything. But then you say, well, how do I have balance if I have so many responsibilities? Well, A, stop all the responsibilities. I believe there's a time in life where we simply have to stop juggling, all right? And the more successful we become, the more things we juggle. Can you do this, busy person? Yeah, I can do it, throw it on. Can you do this, martyr person? No, I can suffer, throw it on. Can you do this, enabling codependent? Yeah, give me one more thing. I won't have a life, but I'll be able to do, yeah, throw it on. Hey, Mom, can you do this? Well, why not? I'm the mistress of this house. I'm the hotel gatekeeper. Throw it. And one day you're looking, all you're doing is this all day long. Let them all drop. Let everything in your life drop for a day. And just say, today I resign from life, no responsibilities, and tomorrow I can promise you I'm not picking up all the balls again.
Why is it so hard to change?
We can change. In fact, when we were babies, we were changing all the time. We were adapting to our environment. We tried things, and if they didn't work, we tried things in a different way. We learned to walk by falling and getting up. And then we are taught somewhere when we are 5, 6 years old, parents put greater demands, which is natural, on our behavior. There are certain expectations, and around that time we begin to learn judgment. Once we begin to judge, we cannot, it's extremely difficult to change. Because the more you judge, the more you are stuck on what you've done wrong. Because judgment is focusing you on the past. You made an error, and now you're feeling all your energy. Remember I said energy flows where attention goes. You made a mistake, and all your energy is on that mistake. And the pain of of that judgment, the pain of accusing yourself of being no good, not smart enough, not attractive enough, does not allow a person to find more creative solutions, finding new ways of responding. In fact, there is actually a neurophysiology study confirming just that. We have a part in our brain called locus coeruleus, and that part is responsible for creativity. And it's interesting that locus coeruleus is activated. That is, we can find new solutions, we can create change. When norepinephrine is not flowing through the brain. Norepinephrine is flowing when we are anxious. And every time we judge ourselves or others, we have what is called flight or fight response. We become anxious. So the moment we become anxious, norepinephrine is flowing in the brain, and that shuts down the very part of the brain that would help us to find creative solutions. So the way to address it is simply to become aware of any judgment, and again, not to try hard to eliminate it, because once you try hard, you become angry with yourself, how it's not working yet, how could I do that? But simply to acknowledge, here goes Peter judging, here goes John making a choice that is not the best. What is next choice that I want to make? So the less judgment you have, the more you will be able to find creative solutions to your challenges.
Does size really matter?
It depends upon what size. If someone's not feeling it, it matters. But if you think it's important, it's important. And anytime you're in high school, see how many guys are looking at each other in the shower. Damn, okay, all right. And if you're insecure about yourself, then you're going to be insecure about your sexuality. You're going to be insecure about what you do. I mean, the trouble is in our society, men have this very warped concept. I'm a real man. I'm a real man. You're a real man? Good. You're both real men. You know, we're going to go see a porn movie. We're going to go see Jim, who's got 3 inches, or John Holmes, who's got 16. John Holmes. Why do you want to go see a guy with a big schlong? You got something going on in your mind that I'm not aware of? Now think of that for a moment. How many guys want to see porn with big guys, right? Why? Why? So don't be afraid of what you've got, and also understand that almost always when guys feel insecure about their size, they're going to overcompensate. And the overcompensation frequently will mean rush to ejaculation, premature ejaculation. They try to compensate by being sexual athletes, or they reverse themselves and they don't want to have sex. They're afraid. They're afraid they'll be ridiculed. And that's unfortunate. Don't believe in any of those sexual extender products. That's all nonsense. Nothing's going to grow you. I mean, what you got, you've got. And people spend gazillions of dollars on that stuff. Well, if you're happy, why would you be, one company has sold over $100 million of that crap. That means there are there are a million guys, or 2 million guys who are insecure about themselves. Think of what you can do where size doesn't matter. Think of all the ways you can play. I want to tell you something. If you've got a big mind, a little prick won't matter. And you got a little mind, no size prick's going to matter. Well, that's true. Because remember, at the end of everything, when it comes to sexuality, it's all up here. The size matters up here because it's the capacity to think, to experience, to explore, to do so with joy, happiness, and excitement, to bring in that sense of innocence that you're capable of doing anything you want. And yet the older we get, almost always we get either jaded, or we get depressed, or we think our opportunities are minimal. And I was just on a cruise with 1,000 people, and most of them were senior citizens, and I was invited on to do the nutrition lectures, and that was kind of worthless, because they'd be sitting there at the breakfast table eating 12 pieces of bacon with a sausage and muffins and eggs and some kind of Jell-O, and I'm thinking, where is this little woman putting this stuff? Now, Gary, if I take a B vitamin in the morning Well, and I'm thinking, why are you talking about B vitamins? You're not going to be alive by afternoon. You're going to be dead from a heart attack. You ain't making it. Why eating it? Well, it's free. It's not free. You paid for it. The fact it's free doesn't mean you have to eat everything, but don't tell that to people on the ship. I mean, I've never seen that much food consumed in my life. And they just kept coming back. It's almost like they ring a bell, 3 in the morning. Time for one more bite of food. And they bring, and I was at a table with little tiny women, like 80 years old, eating humongous amounts of food. And then someone asked about sex, and I says, "Are you having good sex?" "Oh, no, what do you mean? I haven't had sex in 40 years. "Why not?" "Well, whom am I going to have sex with?" "All the other men that are out there who are not having sex." And people forget that all you have to do is open yourself up and you can have a partner. There are no shortage of partners to have sex with. There's simply a shortage of openness to want to have that experience and the willingness not to be afraid of being rejected. And look, if you're not afraid of being rejected in anything, then you have nothing to lose. If you're afraid of being rejected in anything you want to share with someone else, then you're not going to have fulfillment. The sheer act of sex itself does not mean that it's fulfilling. The fulfillment is preset in the mind. Anticipation, expectation, and then the exploration. And sex should be something that you explore. And you should be able to explore it with ease, without fear, without judgment. And if you think you're old, you are. If you think you're wilted, you are. If you think you're just nothing passionate, then you won't be. Or you can be just the opposite. In fact, one of the most sensual women I ever met in my life was 58 years old. And I was in my 20s. And it was not her body, no, it was her mind. It's all in the mind. That's the ultimate passion. And that's where we should play. I believe that I have discovered a missing link in human behavior. We have so many people, theoretically, if you have all the same input, the same education, the same friendships, the same parental input, you should all turn out the same. You should all be the same. But we're not, are we? Why do some people enjoy working in a factory for 40 years, putting tires on cars every day, and some people wouldn't do it for 2 hours? We are born one of 7 life energies. There are 3 major energy classifications. There's dynamic, creative, and adaptive. And 3 subgroups, aggressive, assertive, and supportive. 7 life energies. The assertives, I would say, are the moral equalizers of a society. The aggressive is the one that gets the job done. Creatives are the artists. Everyone has to measure their effort based upon that energy that they're at. I believe it is the missing link that would completely change all of human nature and how we work. It is called life energies. Each life energy has sex in different ways and perceives sex differently. Now, the energies are dynamic aggressives, the leaders of the world in business, dynamic assertives, and dynamic supportives, 3 dynamic energies. And then you have adaptive aggressive, adaptive supportive, and creative assertives. And these energies are unique in that the ones most likely to have a poor sex life are the adaptive supportives, because they're frequently in long-term monogamous relationships. They don't have a whole lot of experience that they're going to have, nor do they frequently have married their partner right out of high school or college. They tend to be people who want permanency in their life, permanent home, family, job, and they dedicate themselves to being a cooperative member of their society. So their sex is frequently rather limited. It's the same. But these are also people that when they're frustrated sexually, they sublimate. They'll watch television and hear other people talk about their sexuality. They'll read magazines. And that's why almost all these women's magazines, and many of the men's magazines, have on them 10 ways to enhance your sexual life. They've read 6,000 of those articles. Hasn't enhanced anything, right? So they sublimate. So what a person is frustrated in one area of their life, they'll sublimate in another, frequently overeating, frequently depression. So when you're dealing with a person who may be depressed and you say, well, they're depressed, let's give them tranquilizers, what would happen if that person suddenly was able to have a really powerful, happy, healthy, positive, creative sex life? You wouldn't see them needing to sublimate. Other people will drink, others will gamble, others will keep busy. But when you're not satisfied with your sexual life, you will sublimate. An adaptive assertive is a problem solver. These are the geeks. These are the people that love each day to find something that's wrong so they can fix it. They're wonderful human beings. They're the people that'll come over and program for the next 3 years your computer, and you don't even know how to turn the damn thing on. Right? They're the people that'll go into your car and find out everything that's wrong with it and fix it. And you don't even know where the motor is. Is it the front or the back? But when it comes to their own sex life, their mind tends to be extremely creative also. And they're the ones who look for ways to make sex more interesting. And they generally have an interesting sex life. And it's generally fulfilling. Then you have the creative assertives. And the creative assertives are one group of individuals, the artists of life, who have some of the most interesting sex because they simply extend what they have as a way of looking at life in more creative ways and seeing a deeper, richer experience in life that they either paint or draw or write or dramatize, and they bring it into their sexuality. So they're open. And if there's any group that is really open sexually, it's the creative assertives. The downside of that is that they're also extremely emotional. There'll either be completely strangulation in a relationship to where you can't breathe, Or on the back side of that, about every 6 months, they swing into their work, in which the work becomes important and you're rather irrelevant at that point. And if you don't understand how to be in a creative assertive's life and realize there's going to be an ebb and flow, and then it's going to come back again, and suddenly all the passion's reignited, the passion's there, except they put their chi, their primary chi, into their work. And frequently artists who are very committed to their work don't have a very strong sexual drive, because that chi can be used, and frequently is, in creating. So you can literally be exhausted by creating, but not feel that you've missed anything with your sexuality. And they tend to be far more interesting in the sense that they're willing to experiment and do all kinds of things. Anything you can think of sexually, a creative assertive has probably tried or was willing to, where you will not get that from most of the other life energies. The adaptive aggressive is the most interesting to look at sexually. These are the people that are always dressed to the nines. If it's a man, they're immaculate. They generally are in sales or marketing, and they're charmers, right? They'll talk you into anything. The women are almost always the ones who will become a mistress. They don't mind taking away a family, all right, as long as they get what they want. They're liars, they'll manipulate, they'll use sex. They could care less about you sexually. And just remember, anytime you have sex with an adaptive aggressive, anybody that they can talk about it, they will, and any way they can use it against you, it's going to happen. All right, man or woman, they're going to betray you. They're going to use you. And yet, they're one of the most sexually frustrated groups because their motives are always confused. They're always thinking that somehow, if I use my sex, this relationship will be good. And they're the one life energy, more than any other of the 7 life energies, they're the one that uses sex for the relationship, thinking that somehow this relationship is going to make me feel better about myself. That never happens. And as soon as they can jump from that relationship to another one, they will. They're always looking over your shoulder once they're in their life. They'll never look in the eyes. It's always, what's the next best thing for me, male or female? And they're the ones that use people and leave them. And they generally have a lot of sexual experiences. Adaptive supportives do not. Adaptive assertives do not. Creative assertives generally go long periods of time without sexuality. But adaptive aggressives have the most sex of any group of life energies. And then you have the dynamic supportives. And they're the easiest going of any group. They're loving people. They're great family people. They have good relationships with friends. People like them because they're easy to be around. They don't ask anything from you. They're always giving. They're teachers, they're coaches, they're giving, giving, giving. And they're big picture people. They see the big picture of life. And as a result, you can always talk with them. You always feel the comfort of being in the presence of a dynamic supportive because they see the big issues of life. They can understand things. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to spell it out. They understand. And they're very, very accepting. They have great sense of humor. They can laugh at themselves. They can laugh at other things. And they're not expecting you to do somersaults to be in their life. My brother was a dynamic supportive. You go into his house, everything was a mess. You know, everything, because every day people came in his house. People loved being there. They'd come in and hang out. If it was a basketball team, the whole basketball team would come in and eat before they go home, because it was more fun to go over to his house and eat before they went home and eat. And there's this sense of acceptance. Sexually, they don't need a lot of sex. It's fine, but they don't need it. A lot of their fulfillment comes from what they do with others, and they connect on that primal energy level with others. And that is a fulfillment level for sexuality. The dynamic assertives, they're the most critical of all the groups. They're challenging to be with. They do not bear fools well. They're perfectionists. They demand high standards of themselves and everyone else. In the South, we call it running with the big dogs. If you're dynamic assertive, you're going to run with the big dogs. They don't have a problem being alone. There's long periods of abstinence in their life. They tend to access the 7th chakra, the spiritual chakra, and the 1st chakra, and put it into other people in their work and what they do. When they have sex, they're very open, but people can feel the energy. And when you're in the presence of a dynamic A dynamic aggressive and a dynamic assertive deal both energies. If you're not dynamic, you're going to feel intimidation. And if you are dynamic, you don't feel any problems. Now, dynamic women, dynamic assertive women, of which there are many, and those are the women who are running their own businesses and done very well in corporate America, or people who are great advocates, many of the feminists, many of the educators, they're dynamic assertives because they're not afraid to assert themselves. And they don't care what everyone else thinks. They don't. They make up the rules as they go along. And they don't like going in a group. You got a whole group, you're not going to find them. Yeah, they like doing things themselves, even if they're the only ones doing it. They're never boring, they're always interesting, and they're very creative. And they're very accepting, unless you are negative. If you're a dynamic, assertive woman, and you get, needy and greedy, they'll warn you, they'll coach you, they'll counsel you, and then they'll say, get the hell out. All right? And unfortunately, and I really feel empathy for dynamic, assertive women because they are so enlightened, they are so dynamic, they are so charismatic. They draw men who are dysfunctional like moths to a flame. Man, they got men coming out of the woodwork, all wanting to be nurtured and loved and coddled, and because it's so easy for them to give, other people live through their energies. And as I told one friend who is a dynamic assertive, who was in a dysfunctional relationship, and she's very empathetic and had a hard time just saying to the person no, I said, all the things you do, who suggests it? Me. Who's the one who provides the door to be opened? Me. You're carrying him on your energy. You're the eagle, and he is the fly in your back. Don't confuse your experience with someone else as if they've created it. The dynamic assertive has the capability of owning the experience. By the way, there's only two energies that will actually own their own experience. Dynamic assertive men and women, and dynamic aggressive men and women. Everyone else will back off what they've created. They're much more comfortable by you creating the experience and then they participating. Because if you created it, you're responsible. So it doesn't work. Wasn't my idea. It was your idea. I didn't create it. And just be aware of that. So if you're around a dynamic aggressive or a dynamic assertive, expect a lot of different experiences, and they are not afraid to own the energy. But also, they're fully aware if you're not creating the energy, and you can't own what you don't create. So until you create what you want and then apply it, you're just a passenger. You're just a spectator. You might as well bought a ticket and got in a gallery with everyone else and said, okay, what are we going to do today? All right, I'll be with you with that, but if I don't like how it feels, if it contradicts something within me, I'm going to throw it back on you. And just remember, there's nothing worse than having what someone thought was good sex and then they throw back up on you because they can't own the experience. And most people don't own their experience because to do so, they'd have to come forward and announce, this is who I am. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what I'm willing to do. And people are terrified to make themselves that vulnerable in a society that will take anything that represents a weakness and crucify you for it. On the one hand, we are utter hypocrites in America, utter total hypocrites. We say, be honest, be open. The moment someone is, boom! Before you can blink, we've busted your ass against the wall someplace. Little wonder that nobody wants to be honest about anything in America. Because the moment you're honest about anything, you're going to get nailed. And you all know that, don't you? Yeah, like we vote someone into office and we say, be all honest, be vulnerable. Someone's all vulnerable. We don't want to vote for you. You're weak. We want people with certainty. So we vote everyone into office who's certain and nothing that they're certain about ever works. Instead of just allowing people to be who they are. So those are the only two energies, dynamic assertive, dynamic aggressive women and men who will own their experience, share it, and can then let it go. Dynamic aggressive men and women, it's a little different in that the one energy that they appreciate being with is adaptive supportive because they generally don't have very strong sex drives. You would think the most powerful people in the world would be the most sexually open. They are not. In fact, you frequently find they have the most humble of husbands or wives. And the mistake they make is when they get bored with their life and they start wanting to have sex and they can't get any connection going with their partner, they find a male or female mistress. And that's when the trouble begins. Remember, anyone who's willing to betray someone else to get in your life will betray you to get in someone else's life. That's an absolute. So someone who's willing to do that with you, don't have them in your life. All right? And yet look at all the different people who end up getting nailed because of their sex life. Well, we shouldn't. If you don't think it's important, it's not important. Except when you're running for office, or you're a very famous person who has a certain moral standing within the community, and suddenly, oh, he cheated on his wife or something like that. Just understand who's going to be doing that. And that's why they want adaptive supporters, because the adaptive supporters will not betray them, will not confront them, will simply be there forever, no matter what happens, with them. They're supportive. The other energies, they're afraid wouldn't. So that's what you see in this phenomena. Now, that's just giving an overview of some of the energies. And by the way, there's more variations, and that's not the only part of this, but it lets you know that it's not just about let me have a happier and healthier and better sex life. It's about the energies themselves can be a part of the process. Thank you all very much.